please silence your electronic devices. That would be greatly appreciated. Call the April 26, 2016 Village Board of Trustees meeting to order. Roll call, Mr. Offel.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Carter.
Here.
Mr. Deshays.
Here.
Mr. LeBeer. Here. I am here. Ask for a motion to dispense with the regular agenda for the purpose of entering into a budget work session concerning the upcoming fiscal year village budget. We'll do that next after we do this. So, Mr. Carl.
Second.
Mr. LeBeer. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We do have one item of work to do before we get to that. You should have a memorandum in front of you from Superintendent Fayad. Mr. Fayad.
Yeah, this is in regards to the project that we want to undertake, and this was approved by the board last year in regards to replacing the sewer line on 37 going from Bailey Road to East Dover Street, and some upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant. And we are requesting to, we got to the point where we are requesting to go out to bid, and we're just looking for approval to do so.
So moved.
Second. Mr. Ruppel, second by Mr. LeBeer. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Call a special meeting of the Massena Town Board to order for the purpose of reviewing the budget of the Joint Recreation Commission. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, welcome everyone. We have three items tonight: the Business Development Corporation, the Joint Recreation Commission, and then the village will work on the remainder of their budget and potentially adopt their budget. So first up is the BDC. We have the director, Tom Sullivan, is here, and the president of the board, Mr. Larry Ralston. Gentlemen, there's two chairs up here if you wanted to sit up here, be a little closer. Appreciate that.
Oh boy, I'll tell him.
So you should have in front of you information that I shared at the budget presentation, proposed 5 strategies for moving Massena forward, which are contained within the budget. One was centralizing the code enforcement and building department and housing office, and essentially that's relocating all of that to the fire hall. Second would be the adoption of the core of the community plan, which would include the adoption of the New York State Real Property Law 45A tax exemption, the establishment of a community development fund, and then there's a number of other things there in the details that come with that downtown restoration fund. Anybody that wants copies of this will make it available to you. Third piece is a broader and aggressive housing rehab program. Fourth is continue strategic planning and grant writing. And then the fifth was the transition away from local development strategy and more to a local community development strategy. So Mr. Sullivan is here. We're going to open it up to you first. You did make a request for funding, so I'll turn it to you.
Yes, back in September, we requested, I sent you a correspondence discussing some of the projects that we've been involved with. Indicated that the village's last full funding cycle that you had provided us with $45,000 of funding. That was essentially eliminated. Previously, I think last year was 12.5 maybe. The town picked up the other portion of the village's funding for us, and so I respectfully ask for a minimum of 15 to help us with our budget. We are very tight on our budget. I believe that there is very significant value in the BDC and in the activities of the Business Development Corp. We've been successful in obtaining 2 Main Street grants over the last number of years. Been very instrumental in getting a rail spur installed into our industrial park, and actively working with 2 different entities to start using that rail spur. We're working on a couple other projects that are not solidified yet. One with the village being a property properties adjoin each other in the industrial park. We're working closely with the town on a project that we've been involved with for a couple of years. It's involved with recreation and tourism, and that could be a transformational type project for our region. Over the last, I would say over the last couple of years, we've established a much more solid working relationship with the county IDA, with Michelle Capone from Bank, many other RVRDA, that organization. So I believe that there's value to what we're doing. We're instrumental in helping through Insight Architecture, which I provide the mayor documentation from Insight when they were here to work on our downtown revitalization and design guidelines for our community. That's a document that the village board, if they haven't adopted, probably should adopt, because it's very, to the mayor's proposal, it's very direct to downtown corridor and how properties, as they're being rehabbed or new construction, should blend or look to fill in the community, so it's going to be some uniformity to the construction. Through that process, there's an awful lot of discussion on code reviews, and recommendations were given to the village to look at codes and reviewing of those codes and how they are impacting with the different, those different downtown design guidelines. And then all of that kind of blends into the seminar many of us attended a couple weeks ago on the streetscapes, and how we can make our streets safer and more business friendly to our community. So that being said, we respectfully would ask for funding for the BDC. We are more than happy to participate in many of these activities. The restoration fund would be dovetailed nicely that we could administer that for the village once that's up and running and fully funded. We've been doing that with some compact money from the town that we use for rehab purposes within our community for people that are investing in their properties. That program kind of mirrors our Main Street grant, but it's a little looser, and obviously there's not as much funding available. We work closely with Alcoa in trying to look at their direction, where they're going with property they have. Are they willing to utilize the property in other ways? The property manager and their public relations person, we formed a very good working relationship. So there's, in my estimation, I can let Larry speak for himself. There's many projects we're involved with. Some of them I'm hoping it'll turn into positive results, but as we all know, we're working with the Alcoa cloud hanging over our head, and we have to not let that be a deterrent and continue to work through the different opportunities that present itself to us.
Mr. Ralston, anything to add?
Where to start? I can appreciate from both boards your dilemma in putting a budget together. Al and I were at the high school during those years when contingency budgets was just a rule of thumb, and getting a budget passed was unusual. I can appreciate the position you're in. I can also appreciate the position the BDC is in. The Business Development Corporation for Greater Massena is one of thousands and thousands of the same type of organization throughout this country who are trying to lure businesses into their community, because those are the folks that create the jobs. The BDC does not create jobs. Oh, I'm sorry, we've created two. One, and our secretary, two. Business folks are the ones that create jobs. It's our job to persuade businesses to move into the Massena area and create jobs. Now, we're doing that in a state that has a reputation of being the most unfriendly to small business. We are in a situation coming through a very long recession, the worst in the history. We are in a state where businesses are moving south to those states where they have right-to-work rules. If the BDC, and I know in the community there is a segment that wants to see the BDC disappear, because they're saying, how many jobs have you created? 2. Well, you're not worth the money that's being invested. If the BDC disappears from Massena, there is going to be a void left that someone better pick up. The number of meetings with other economic development agencies in St. Lawrence County, which there are probably 8, 9, or 10 of them. He's there representing Massena's interests. He has created an excellent relationship with the IDA, which in the past between Massena and the IDA has been wanting. Now when people are coming and looking, when potential entrepreneurs are coming and looking for a place to locate, they talk to Mr. Sullivan, because Mr. Sullivan showed a willingness to work with them. There is going to be a void in who is going to address the calls of potential entrepreneurs calling the BDC office, hey, we would like to know more about Massena. Who's going to handle those calls? And they do come in. They do come in. Unfortunately, 98% of them don't come to fruition, but somebody has to address that. Somebody has to address that. Who's going to handle the rail spur? Who's going to handle the responsibility that are still connected with the Main Street grants? Who is going to make those initial calls to potential businesses that may be thinking about coming into Massena from leads coming from areas where Mr. Sullivan has developed relationships? Relationships in Plattsburgh, New York. Relations outside of this community that he has established contact with, representing the BDC. Hey, keep us in mind if you're going to expand, or if you hear of companies coming to expand, that want to expand in North Country, give us a heads up. Mr. Sullivan has done that. Who on these 2 boards will fill in that gap? You folks have your hands full as it is already. I rest my case.
And if I may, Ken, the couple of things I left out, the Racer site, that's a real challenging site, and that's a site that we, as a community, in the town, we have to stay on top of Racer, because Racer is, it's a unique setup, being that they report to the entity, the bankruptcy court that created them. And I'm sure you're aware, we've received correspondence from Racer. That we have a challenge with Racer in the direction that we as a community need to go, in the direction that Racer wants to go. We're very involved in that process. I will say I am very happy with, I have a wonderful board of managers, board of directors to work with. Is in the past, has that always been the case with the BDC? Probably not. But right now, and I give the town board credit, and I give the village board credit, because they have not made political appointments to that BDC board to fill a favor, if you will. We have a lawyer, we have a commercial banker, we have a finance individual from the Massena Electric Department, we have a retired school administrator, we have labor represented, and we have railroad represented. And those people are out in their normal jobs on a daily basis, always having the Business Development Corp and Massena at their best interest. There's many, many times those folks are having communications with individuals that have a potential to come back to this community. I'm sure the village is aware through the dealings with the folks that we're dealing with for the land purchase. You get some very unique individuals that come through when they're looking to this area. You have no idea if they're real, and you spend significant amount of time. The folks currently looking at our lot and the village lot, I first had contact with that individual 2 years ago. Never in a million years did I think they'd be coming back. But they've come back, he's come back with some people that seem to be more realistic, that have a little more normalcy to them, if that's the right word, from the original person that made contact. Many of these things, they don't transpire overnight. And you get calls, we had calls with a gentleman the other day for about a month and a half, back and forth every other day, and for the last 3 weeks, not a word. You try to track him down, you give him a little space, and he'll reach back out to him again. Many times people will try to use this as leverage against another location, so you're continually trying to ferret out that information to see are they real or they're not. But anyway, so that's my belief. I believe there's, and it's not just because I'm in the chair as a director. I believe there's value in that organization, and it brings a lot to the table for this community.
I haven't heard anything that I disagree with, which lends support to what I have believed for a while, is that perhaps we're going about it the wrong way in this community. I've said long before I sat in this chair that we've asked the BDC to do a job with their hands tied behind their back. We don't give you the appropriate resources because we don't have them. So is economic development, is community development more appropriate for Massena as opposed to economic development? And leave that to the broader overarching agencies, county IDA and bank and other people. And should we be focusing, rather than on those things and the racer site and those types of things, and be focusing on our downtown and small business development and the community restoration fund, which I think the BDC is in a perfect position to administer. There's great advantages to having a local development corporation, there's no question. We've never really utilized it here in Massena. So, I mean, for me, the question is, do we get rid of the BDC? I'm not sure that's appropriate, nor am I sure it's possible at this point because of your assets. So do we refocus the BDC and say, these are the things we want you focusing on and doing? Or do we just scrap it all together and go to a planning office and a planner who can do a number of these things, but we lose the advantages of having a local development corporation? And none of what I've just said is a slight to any of the two of you or your board of directors. I mean, everyone's well-intentioned and working hard. The question is, how do we do what's best to move Massena forward in the next few years? And I personally believe it's more of this community development stuff. It's complete streets, it's downtown revitalization, it's housing market. It's those things that would make the community attractive for business to want to come here. And then whoever that person is, or agency is, or organization is, works with the IDA and other people on the economic development pieces and still is our representative, completing those functions as they come up.
There's some validity to what you say, but I think it's incumbent upon the village to adopt those guidelines. I mean, there's been 2 Main Street grants that came out of the BDC. So they indicate that there's not focus there. There is focus there. The downtown coalition came out of the BDC. The historic committee, the theater organization, those all came out, derived out of the BDC. Now, based on circumstances, some things happened, some things didn't. But now it's been well over a year since the downtown design guidelines were given to the village for adoption. I don't know that they've been adopted. So that needs to happen. Our codes to prevent, people don't want to invest in the community, in the downtown corridor, or any place in the community if I'm going to invest $100,000 in my building and the guy next to me puts purple siding on his building. If those are adhered to, had they been adhered to after the first Main Street grant in '05, I think we would see things differently. I think we would see better involvement from entrepreneurs willing to invest in their properties. But my belief, this is only my opinion, until those two things are done, we're gonna see resistance from folks wanting to invest in their properties because the property next door is gonna not match what they've done, and therefore, they're not gonna invest the money. Those are key things to what you're trying to do in this. And that's why I'm glad to see at the top of the list, the code combined, but there needs to be some teeth and some enforcement. Now, I know people aren't gonna be happy, right? When you're told this is what you have to do with your property, that kind of bristles people. But it has to start happening so that we can move forward. Other communities do it. You know, I would, if I'm investing in Seasons, and no disrespect to the Masonic Lodge, but I don't want that blue siding on one side with a white stripe down the side and a red front. Doesn't encourage me to want to invest any more in my property, because now I'm competing with that. So that's key, because people aren't gonna invest in the downtown if they know there's not continuity to make it gonna look right. The LLC that's working on the Slavens project, they still are working diligently trying to find tenants for that building, and the plan for that building is housing upstairs. Like we're talking here, housing upstairs, commercial on the first floor. So much of what you're saying in this is already in process and has been being done. Maybe not outlined on this plan. But I don't think at least not in the short term, we don't want to lose that connection to the county IDA and to those folks. I think we worked too hard over the last 2 years to try to bring people back to the table, to bring them back into the fold, to say, look, give us a call. Hey, I'm the first one to call Patrick Kelly or Rich Williams if I don't have a clue of what these people are talking about. Patrick, we gotta meet, and we're doing that. We're doing that on an ongoing basis, so. A lot of what's here is being done or has been attempted to be done, and I think it can be done, but it all comes down to funding, and then those codes are key. That's a key element in this process. We've talked about it before. You go to some of these communities, and it's tough to draw correlations to us against Hudson, Ohio, let's say. Or Hudson, Ohio, you drive in the community, and McDonald's looks like a colonial building, and the only M is on the sign this big at the entrance. But the entire community is got a theme to it, and they adopt the codes. If you're not gonna adhere to it, then you're not gonna locate in this part of the community. So there's challenges. I think that collectively, between the BDC, the village, and the town, we can pull together and move forward and make a lot of this stuff happen. We're seeing some strides. We're seeing some movement. The biggest thing is we got to get beyond the Alcoa scare, because realistically, is Alcoa going to be here in 3 years? I don't know that it's going to be. When you listen to Klaus Kleinfeld when he's talking to Jim Cramer on Mad Money, and he talks more about the northwest part of the country, and that's their focus, not the northeast. That's a scary thing to listen to. I rest my case.
One more thing, Mr. Mayor. Personally, after serving with the BDC and talking with other economic organizations, not only up here but also in Pennsylvania, I think there is a place and a doable job for the BDC and the Massena. Having said that, I throw out on the table for both the town board's consideration and your consideration a meeting between the three of us, so we can clarify your expectations, Tim and Al, your expectations expectations of what you would see for the BDC,
In our own.
clarify, in our own, and also if you want to quantify them, we'll quantify them. But I think we all ought to be on the same page, and I think over the last several years, even though we've had representation of attending our meetings, we still haven't had that clarification of what your expectations are and what our expectations are of the outcomes you were looking for from the BDC. That should be done.
I thought we did that, Larry, but maybe not. For those who don't know in this room, unless the individual councilmen have questions, because of the differences in the fiscal year, they're going to have to come back to us in October with the same requests right now. So to a certain extent, I mean, we don't have a horse in this race. This is their budget, but I don't know. I thought, when you do sit down with our board, I thought that we did put that machinery in place for the three entities to sit down and to talk. Like, I think, Tom refers to Racer, and it's in your proposal here. Right now, Racer is marketing Racer. The meeting that we had with the lady from Racer, they're taking an active role in marketing that property as it's clean. Okay, the end date for the cleanup is 17, which is next year. So they're going to continue to market that property. We've got another agency working, from that end, but unless the individual members here have questions, it really doesn't affect us. It affects us, but until
A little clarification on the
we're
Racer.
going to do our budget.
A little clarification on the Racer side is the Racers, right now, limited marketing. They have Massena listed in their brochure. They are still marketing it only based on documentation from 2011 of when the North Country Redevelopment Task Force indicated that they wanted that to be market to only potential industrial customers. I don't know that Racer is at this point willing to look outside that box yet. And I think that's very important.
The
that they
lady
look
who was
outside.
here indicated that they were.
Yeah, she was more than willing to look at everything.
Yes, but I think you will see at some point correspondence that may contradict that. That's an integral property for us, and Racer has a lot of control over it, and we just need to determine what is their true control over that property. They're to have it redeveloped and cleaned and marketed. And I'll leave it at that because there's some information that we're not at liberty to discuss in open session. It's a key property.
One of the problems that we always seem to have, and I've been following for years, is it's hard to quantify what you accomplish.
Correct.
I think we were wrestling with that before I was on the board at the last budget session that the town had. I mean, have you come up with any sort of?
Well, as I've shared with you, different things that we've been involved with.
Right.
Now, quantify it, can I say that because the rail spur is in place, that Kern Renewable is gonna hire 10 more people because we've got a rail spur in place? I can't say that today.
Well, I think that's what we
emphatically.
were looking for, Tom, is some way to do that.
And I don't know that there is. I can't tell you that because of the BDC, the Kern Renewable hired 10 people. But because of our interaction with Kern Renewable and Seaway Timber and the IDA and the Arvin RDA, they have 130 people. Now, they probably would have had 150 had the oil prices not dropped and the pellet business, right? So it's fluid. It's things are difficult there. I mean, now they got a nice contract and they're up and running again. on the pellet side.
So are they gonna be using the rails?
At some point, they, in all likelihood, they will, because Pat's invested, Kern Renewables invested a significant amount of in-kind services into that property. Will that create 5 jobs or 50 jobs? I can't tell you that today, but it's out to at least preserve what's there, because their long-term objective is to be able to use that. We do have a user starting this summer, at the end of the summer, on the spur. We've had 2 inquiries on the rail spur. Are those gonna turn into 2 jobs, 5 jobs, or 10 jobs? I can't tell you that at this point in time. It's a very hard number to quantify, and that's the number everybody wants to hang their hat on. How many jobs does it save because of the things that we've been involved with?
Are there other metrics that you could use? Number of contacts, number of organizations?
Yeah, there's, I got a list of contacts, a list of organizations that we've been involved with. Some we can share, some you can't. And that's driven not by us, that's driven by the people on the other end of the phone or the other side of the table. And we can give you that information as well.
Let me ask this, kind of 2 sides to the coin. You mentioned there's thousands of BDC-like organizations out there doing the same thing. Magic wand, what would you need for the Massena BDC to have a competitive edge? What resources, how much resources?
First of all, you need some funding to be able to use to leverage people to come here. And it could be from little to big, right? I have people calling and saying, we'd like to locate in the downtown corridor. Do you have any grant money? No, but I can hook you up with the proper people that really have loans, not a lot of grants. So we had, much like the Tim's Community Development Fund, if you had a bank of money that you can say, okay, I'm gonna loan you $30,000 and I'm gonna grant you $7,500. And now you've got a little bit of ability to work with people, okay? And I go back to, you have to have consistency in our codes, in our vision of what our community is gonna look like. I mean, that's important to people when they come here. What is the vision for your community? So the biggest thing is to be able to have funds, so you're not always having to go match them up with somebody else, but that's what we do. We're gonna, Jim Murphy from Adirondack Economic Development Council, we're in the process of trying to establish a work seminar for veterans, because he has funds available that they might not be able to get through a bank. So we're gonna try to put that together, and it'd be nice if we had our own funds to be able to do that, but we don't. So we go out and find the people to try to match them up with. North Country Alliance. North Country Alliance is gonna give funding to individuals that may not be bankable. They're too high risk, much like the RVRD, they may be too high risk, so, okay, we need to take you and hook you up with the folks at North Country Alliance. And they also work with SciTech and Small Business Development Council to get you the proper place, to get you the proper business plan, so that you can be successful when you start your business or your endeavor.
So on the flip side, if the BDC was not to be in existence, the void that was mentioned, who's going to fill that void, is it feasible that any of the other multiple alphabet agencies would be able to fill that void?
My belief what's gonna happen is you become forgotten. If you're not in their face on a regular basis, it's easy to be, oh, we're gonna go here, I'm seeing John, I'm seeing Jim, I see these people. If you're not represented at that table, or there's not a mechanism in place to make sure you're represented at that table, you become forgotten. Now, again, it doesn't mean it has to be in the structure. You can't not go away from the table now. There's too many. Each community is in very dire straits. If you listen to the news, that was at Potsdam, was the most fiscally stressed village in the nation, they said. I mean, I can't believe that, but But that's, so now Potsdam's fighting a perception because somebody put in a news story that they're the most fiscally stressed village. Augsburg, Massena are not the communities we were in the 50s.
Very few communities are.
That's right. There's Mr. Wax, our little guy that came many years ago, so what are those pictures gonna be in 5 years? Because it's not what's there now. We're in a transition period, and we're still trying to figure out what are we gonna be? What are we gonna be when we grow up? Because we're having a hard time competing in a global market to attract some of these people. When you got South Carolina and Tennessee that are just giving boatloads of funding out. I had a conversation with Joe Gray Joe Griffo on a week ago Monday. A solar panel manufacturer from Japan looking to invest in Buffalo. Well, wait a minute, Joe, why Buffalo? Can you find out, somewhere the state signed an agreement 2 years ago for the solar panel manufacturing to come to Buffalo. Come to Massena. Well, we got a place up here. That to me is what gets lost if there's not an entity in place to rattle those chains.
I think we all agree the approach to economic development has to be on a regional approach, particularly with the Regional Economic Development Council announcement, with the governor's plan. We have the St. Lawrence County Economic Development Study that came out of the McKinsey study. St. Lawrence County is redoing their SEDS, their County Economic Development Study Program. If it's good for Massena, it's good for Norfolk. If it's good for Norwood, it's good for Massena. It has to be done regionally. The question is, and you're exactly right, we have to be at the table. The question is, how do we do both? How do we develop the community and be at that table and make sure that we're a player? You know, we've had 2 successful community development approaches last year with grants. One is the high-speed fiber that's going in, which will start next month, and the other is the waterfront development. And that's community development that can help spur economic development. And recognizing we need economic development, but how is the best way to go forward? And I'm not sure what we have currently set up is the best way. Maybe it is, it just needs to be tweaked. I mean, I think we have to, I mean, we're there. I mean, we've been talking about this, or many of the people that have been at this table have been talking about this for a long time. I mean, we've got to decide how we're going to go forward.
What are you asking for, 15,000? That was a long time.
We asked for originally what the funding was in the past, 45, but I said we'd accept a minimum of 15.
So with the 75 that you're putting in the budget, what do you propose to do with it? That we couldn't, the 15,000 they couldn't have, that you couldn't do with 60?
In the budget under the line item,
You've got 75 here,
under 6789.
right, that's what I'm looking at. You got 75 there, 3 line items?
Right, so the bottom one,
So
which is
what,
420
you're
community
asking for
development.
75, what couldn't you do with 60?
The community development is available at 25,000.
Okay.
The plan.
So the funding you're looking for from the village, last year we moved away on the village side and the town up their ante and we went with the grant writer. So are you looking for the funding from us and then the same amount from them, so you'll have an increase in funding? Or are you looking for it to be a split again?
We've already given them.
They already gave us your other half of last year.
Right, I'm
So
talking
my
about in
belief-
October.
My belief is I'm going back to them with what they normally would have given me, not for your half. My board hasn't had that discussion, because that's in October. But in all likelihood, it'd be what they've normally done for us.
I just want to say that I agree with Tom as far as having a presence. I mean, Augsburg has Augsburg Bridge and Port Authority, that's why they're getting an airport. You know, if we had Massena Bridge and Port Authority, we might have the airport. Potsdam has their people. We have to have somebody at the table as well to represent us, and the squeaky wheel gets the grease, okay? You know, and I know Tom has been after these other boards to help Massena out as well, so and I feel that there's value in that presence as well. And another thing Tom had mentioned, sending somebody for funding somewhere else. If you have something here that attracts somebody, then you have the niche, you have the person coming here. if you send them to somebody else to get funding, they can go anywhere they want. You have to have that as a draw. That's, you know, my point of view on part of this anyway, so for now, until we maybe get together and discuss other avenues of the BDC.
And that's gotten better, there's a greater level of trust with myself and some of these other entities.
Remember, Sam, the OBPA is a regional agency.
Well, they are
Allegedly.
allegedly.
Yeah. However, we have no representation.
I know we don't.
I stick my head in Wade's office, I rarely,
If you were to have 60 of these funds, and give them 15, what couldn't you do? What your, like, your plan for $75,000 is to do something.
The
If you had 60.
25,000 of that is allocated for planning, which could be allocated to the BDC,
Right, okay.
any piece of that.
Let's allocate it from there.
15?
That's what they're asking for. I mean, these are, Tim, I hear what you're saying. I'm looking across the table, I got faith in these guys, I got faith in that organization. Granted, they've struck out a lot. Who the hell hasn't up here? Show me one big success story up here. Let's try it.
We do the 15 out of that 25, the remaining 10. Did you have any proposals for that? Or that?
Not at this point, no.
There's a lot of trust me going on, you know, up here, and I know who he is, I can go talk to him, a lot of other people, a lot of other organizations up here. I don't know what kind of trust I can have in him, I'd like to think I could, but it sounds like he's opened some doors with him, or that group has. That's it, you know, that's how I feel, I'm anxious to hear how the rest of you guys feel.
To go along with the 15, I think we need to immediately following budget adoption, if that, we were to go that way, to start having meetings, whether it's a committee or something, with town, BDC, start examining, so when this question comes up next year, we have more solid answer.
I mean, weren't we doing that? The last one we had was January. I haven't seen another one called. I mean, I've reached out and said, when are we gonna have the next meeting? And we haven't had one. So you're right, Matt, we probably should. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah,
Get
and
the
especially
groups
BDC
together.
specific of what metrics are we gonna be using, what are we gonna be looking for, what ways can we change it if we're gonna stay with it, and also quite honestly look at what options will we need to pull if we abandon the model. You know, because right now, that's the big question in my mind is, we say no, and the town decides in October that they're saying no. Do we have a solid enough plan? And I don't think we do.
you have a ransomware that has to be administered and disaster failure, and those are,
But I do think there should always be that, okay, what if this doesn't
What if-
continue?
Yeah, no, that's.
You know,
you're-
have
you're
that
right.
good plan, you know, but,
I guess I'm not just ready for the what if, you know, to abandon it altogether. I'm ready to what if it, but I'm not ready to abandon it.
Tom, we've talked, have you talked to your board about the community development and administering that?
we talked about, I told them that was one of your plans at our last board meeting, last week. We'd be more than happy to be administrators of that. And the bulk, majority of the board that was there have no problem. They think that's a solid idea, it's a solid plan, because that goes back to your question, what, that gives us something to deal with, gives us something to work with. You know. And again, quite frankly, I think with NIPA, we can find a way to use a little honey instead of vinegar, potentially. We may see a little better activity. And I've had a couple conversations with a couple of folks there that, you know, they at least have indicated, don't feel apprehensive about bringing certain things to us. You know, now, they're not gonna give you cash, but if you can bring them maybe some reasonable projects. Thank you for listening, and any other questions, we're happy, but otherwise, we'll let you get on with your, George is getting nervous back there, George is.
Anything else, gentlemen? BDC?